This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
This is Everything Elite, the world's best podcast devoted exclusively to all elite wrestling and the elite extended universe. I'm Aaron Bentley, and I am joined by the returning Nate, aka Epitasis. What's up, Nate?
That's right. The prodigal son returns. You've heard of Mr. Walk It Out? Well, I'm Mr. Call You Out. No longer will bad takes go uncalled out on this podcast. I'm back to bring some order to this madness. Hello.
We couldn't be more thankful. Also joined by Mike Spears. What's up, Mike?
Hey, y'all. It's your old pal, Iron Mike Spears. I'm doing all right. I'm back up in the foothills until the holidays after a month of being back and forth between Florida and South Carolina. So I'm kind of happy to be back to some sort of normalcy. And somehow I managed to go on 8 plane flights over the last month without getting sick. So I'm taking that as a win. How are you, AB?
I don't know. Haven't had a self vibe check lately, so haven't really thought about it. But feeling okay in this moment, so I'll take that. I had to do some travel this week, and then today I got to kind of take it easy, so that was nice. All right. Follow us if you want to hear more of our vibe checks. We're at Everything AEW on Twitter. I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Nate is at Epitasis. Mike is at Fuji Heya. That's Fuji with 2 eyes, like Don Fuji. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. You can find us on the podcast app of your choice by searching Everything Elite or through the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. If you're on the podcast app, give us a rating and a review, please. Here's what we're going to talk about this week. We're going to do Elite or Delete, of course. We're going to run down what happened on Dynamite this week. And we're going to talk about ratings, 2 weeks worth of ratings, folks. And there's a few other notes, but there's really not too much this week. So we'll mostly just get to talk about Dynamite, which I'm excited about. Before we get started, let me tell you what you can find at patreon.com/everythingelite. So this week, big week for content on the Patreon. On Sunday, I dropped Stardom Status. So if you're looking to get into Stardom, or if you're already into it, I did kind of what was going on so far this month in Stardom at the end of last month. Then on Monday, Brian Quimby joined me for Wrestling Small Business Tyrants, where we talked about the reign of Gabe Sapolsky. That was a lot of fun. Gabe has not melted down on Twitter about it. That's really unfortunate. Was looking forward to that.
Surprised.
On Wednesday, Mike did AEW Light. I was out of town, as I said. And on Friday, I think Mike and I are going to talk about the AEW rankings after they come out. So looking forward to that. Next week, Nate has a big show. It's the Kadani cast reviewing My Dad is a Heel Wrestler. Nate, tell us what it was like. What do we have to look forward to?
Yeah, if you have not seen the film, it is out there with English subtitles. So, put your pirate skills to the test and give it a watch so you can know what we're talking about when we talk about the movie. It's myself, Cara, and Kath Barbadoro, basically going through the movie, discussing it. We all really enjoyed it and found a lot to say about it. So check it out.
Yeah, and just DM me if you can't find the thing, and I'll probably do a link. Do a link for you, because I want to make sure everybody sees it before they hear this show. I watched it last weekend, and I'm very excited to hear the episode. And of course, next week we'll be back with AEW Light. I'll be joining Mike again, thankfully. So yeah, sign up on the Patreon. We've got $3, $5, and $8 tiers. So go check it out. And if you sign up now, you'll get everything we've done so far. And it's early in the month, so you'll get mostly the full month. Just keep in mind, you'll get charged when you sign up, and then again on the 1st of next month. Okay, ratings talk. So because of Thanksgiving, the ratings weren't out when we recorded last week with Drew Spears, who was a great guest. But now we know that last week, AEW got pummeled in overall viewership. 916,000 for NXT, 663,000 for AEW. But AEW won the demo with a 0.32 against a 0.29 for NXT.
That was last week's. Or that was this week's. Last week was 0.26 versus 0.24.
Yeah. You're right. I'm sorry. 0.26, 0.24 last week. So a lot of people losing their minds online. And then we wait for this week's ratings. And I'll just give you all everything, and then we can get some reactions. So this week, AEW pops back 851,000, 8th in the demo with a 0.32. NXT falls to an 845,000 total viewers, 12th in the demo with a 0.29. So they went up in the demo, lost total viewers, and AEW was able to go up in the demo and gain a lot of total viewers. So NXT did, however, for the first time, win the 18 to 34 demo, young women 12 to 34, and of course, as always, they won the 50 plus demo. So what do we think? Nate, give me your thoughts on what happened last week, the bounce back, and like where are we going from here?
I don't think there's too much concern over last week because it did bounce back this week. And, if the pattern holds true, then we might see a bigger bounce back. And next week, as people find their way back after missing it for a week, that tends to be how television works a little bit. But yeah, a lot of people have weighed in with a lot of different opinions on the big dip for Thanksgiving. I think it's just probably a consequence of AEW's audience being younger and being more likely to have other things to do than watch wrestling on a Wednesday night. With DVR viewership, the total viewership for both shows was pretty comparable. So it could also just be, NXT fans or AEW fans came back to the show after Thanksgiving and after the holidays to catch up on it. It may also be NXT was coming off of the Survivor Series and coming off a takeover. So it could just be that people that watch both AEW and NXT happen to watch NXT live, whereas they previously would have watched AEW live. It can go either way on that. I'm looking to see if we get another bounce back and it's back up, toward 900,000 next week. But really, since they came back and AEW is back on top in total viewership this week, I'm not really, an aberration, an outlier last week. It's, you can pretty much write it off because it was a giant holiday.
Yeah. And I think as you said, Nate, the more important thing is going to be how the show on next Wednesday on the 11th is going to be, because as we've seen with the whole deal with the World Series, it kind of took them 2 weeks to get back to that whole like normal rating number before things kind of went back down a little bit. So I don't know if I'm expecting them to get back to a 0.4 demo. I think that's kind of a little bit I think that's a little bit far-fetched. I think that probably 0.37 to 0.36 to 0.37 is what I expect for next week. The thing I found really interesting, like getting granular with it, is so this was the first time that NXT beat AEW in the 18 to 34s, and it was by 1/100th of a rating point. And when you take a look at how the ratings were and the ratings fell, it just seems like at the end of it that maybe this is really getting to a point where we're saying that the younger viewers are more willing to be able to negotiate between AEW and NXT on the same night, whereas the older NXT viewers are just staying there. So I'll be real interested in see how the quarterly breakdowns come out for this. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that this was a tremendous, like, I know that there was discourse about, oh my God, they're totally tanking now. Now it's time for NXT's time to rise. It was a holiday. It was the second biggest travel holiday in the United States. Like, it hit everyone. So you kind of have to treat those weeks like you treat World Series, like big, almost quote unquote moon landing situations. So I'm not too stressed about anything.
I think it's also true that NXT is starting to siphon off some Raw viewership. I think there's some evidence of that. We need to see more data, but some evidence of it. So, but you have to keep in mind that WWE as a whole has a larger audience than AEW has, like a larger universe of potential watchers. So if they can drag down the Raw viewers to watching NXT, I've seen the theory out there that Raw people came to watch NXT because of the Survivor Series angle, realize it's a better show, which I feel confident is true, and stuck around. Whereas AEW just has this one. I mean, I think AEW has a broader potential audience than WWE, but WWE has a more loyal base and a more dedicated viewership. So
Yeah.
I think that's going to be interesting to see if NXT can keep pulling from Raw. Of course, the problem going forward is they still have to make a star at some point and like someone that people want to keep watching.
Right.
And I'm not confident that's going to happen.
So there actually was a little bit of analysis done about the whole NXT versus Raw thing. Aaron, I don't know if you saw this, but the Grapple app put together a comparison of the two. And it's kind of interesting. They only really judged the data points from like October to November. And they kind of did it in a way of what the overall USA wrestling audience was. So it's the combination of Raw and NXT, and then what percentage of it was NXT. And, I mean, there's really not enough data points really to draw any firm conclusion on this, since really they only used 8 weeks worth of data, or 9 weeks. I forget how many weeks are in a month. Don't blame me. We're in the winter. It's cool. So in October, and this is again from Grapple, it's at Grapple, GRAPPL app on Twitter. They said that 23.3% of wrestling viewers on USA watched the share was NXT in October, and that went up to 28.0 in November. So that's a 4.7% difference. It's an increase of 20.2. And you look at it, and Raw went down 7%, but NXT went up 18%. So there might be something there. I don't know if it'll ever be to a point where the two converge. I just don't think that's possible, but it's something that is interesting to watch going forward.
All right. Well, that's enough ratings talk, I think, for one podcast. Let's get on into talking about Dynamite from this week. And of course, we're going to play Elite or Delete. If you are a first-time listener, we just say what's good and what was bad from the show. That's really it. It's not that clever. Okay. Let's start. Nate, hit me with your Elite pick of the week for the December 4 episode of AEW Dynamite.
All right, I will go with the opening television contest of the Young Bucks and Dustin Rhodes against Santana Ortiz and Sammy Guevara. I went to this show in Champaign live. I also went to the show last week in Chicago live, and I think this was the best match off either of those. I will say that I enjoyed the Champaign show considerably more overall. It just the wrestling was more exciting. The fans were more into it. It was more of a sort of boisterous atmosphere. And that all pretty much started here with this first match with just, the sort of kinetic, super exciting Young Bucks trios matches that we've come to know and love over the last half decade or whatever. And it was particularly fun this time having Dustin Rhodes involved, having, the old boomer come in here with his Young Bucks tights and throwing triple super kicks and doing comedy power slam spots and doing a front flip senton off the apron while Nick Jackson flew over his head off the turnbuckle. Just a lot of fun. Crowd was super into it. And yeah, this was, the best thing over the last 2 weeks, and it sort of set the tone for the rest of the show and ended up being, I think, a really fun show.
Yeah, this was a fun opener. Like these are the kind of openers that I feel like I've said each time they have one. This is what I really like to kickstart a show. And it just was like a really cool thing, like watching how proud and powerful they've really made a thing about like being bullies in the division. And one of their big spots is that they will do the long time delayed suplex where they'll pass it back and forth between Santana Ortiz, but then they pass it over to Sammy, and Sammy wasn't able to keep it up, and that turned out to be a hope spot for the Bucks and Dustin. I thought that was really cool. And then, hey, if you're going to do a callback to Masato Yoshino in your finish by doing a missile senton indie taker, I'm okay with that. I'm all aboard that. So it was a fun opener. I thought it was a blast.
Yeah, I think Dustin shows that you can either be, as you age in this business, you can either be Jim Cornette or you can be Dustin, as he is now, and like the much more fun thing to be is Dustin. You know, he's just like, even when we heard him on commentary on Dark, right? He's like, oh, this is really fun. This thing that these wrestlers are doing now is so cool. They're so athletic. I wish I could have done that kind of stuff when I was wrestling or whatever, which is like not only a better way to age as a wrestler, but like a better way to age as a human of just like, okay, this stuff is cool, whatever. So happy for Dustin, and it was an enjoyable match.
The difference was crystallized just because during their entrance, there was somebody under the hard cam with a big Cornette blocked me sign that I think the Bucks kind of acknowledged. So it was like, yeah, you get the Cornette there, and then you get Dustin out there having fun and, you know, introducing himself to a whole new generation of fans, probably.
Oh, absolutely. Mike, what pick you got for us?
All right. My elite of this week was how they set up Jungle Boy as a time filler, something to do for Chris Jericho, because Cody has said that this is not a title shot, but I think that they might do something here to make it into a title shot for the new year. And the reason why I like this, and I think this is something that a lot of people just think that this is ridiculous, and that why is this being a thing for Jericho when Jericho obviously has Moxley in the horizon. And it still kind of applies with Cody dealing with the motherfucking Butcher and the motherfucking Blade while he still has his sights on MJF, is everyone just has their minds like so warped by the idea that United States wrestling has to be either month to month or week to week. This is a promotion that's going to have 4 big events each year, and you're going to have stuff you're going to be doing out. In the meantime, you're not going to just completely go away and just kill and just disappear until like it's time to build the pay-per-view. You're gonna have your beats each week for MJF and Cody or Moxley and Jericho, but you're still going to have like overriding thing like Jericho's champion. Jericho should be forced to like have matches on TV even though he's a champion. So I think that people who are just like thinking like, if you're focusing so much on the fact that Cody is doing something else as like bad booking, you just need to get yourself out of the mindset of how wrestling has been and just look at how they've been able to do great stuff week to week. Like, I don't know, did either of you all watch Dark this week?
No, I was there. So.
Oh yeah, you were there. Sure. So yeah.
No, I didn't watch it.
So the reason why I bring that up is that outside the matches, they used every part of Dark to build up the show in Champaign. So they are showing that they're doing week to week and show to show booking while still having these overarching things, and having Jungle Boy in there as someone that Jericho has made a point of before. And as Jericho has now had 2 televised title defenses that have helped elevate people that they see as future stars, I think this is a brilliant idea. And I mean, it was also another really good Jericho promo. So I thought this was a home run, and some of the best stuff that Chris Jericho does is this.
Yeah, Jericho was really funny, as we've come to expect. So I think they set it up that it's going to be like a 10-minute challenge, right? That he has to last 10 minutes with Chris Jericho. That was sort of the angle that they were building there.
Yeah, that was the impression that he can't last 10 minutes, so it might be a 10-minute match, or it could be a 20-minute match that he goes at least 10 minutes and gets a title shot based off of that.
Okay, yeah. I just feel like, knowing how savvy they've been about sort of putting these things together and designing a match to tell the story that they want, I'm just anticipating something really exciting there where Jungle Boy's trying to last those 10 minutes and just coming right up against it, and probably going to be a lot of drama there. So yeah, I think that should be good. I wasn't super high on the Jurassic Express's share of the promo workload there. Like, Luchasaurus, like the master's degree thing is fine. The marginalized dinosaur thing is like kind of borderline. Like, it's obviously not with there's no like ill intent there, I don't think, but it's kind of just like, okay, yeah, we get it. You're making fun of the concerns of indigenous people or whatever particular example you want to use. And then, Jungle Boy obviously is not somebody who they've given a lot of promo time, or we've seen have a lot of promo time in other promotions. And so that will have to develop, or, I'm kind of fine with him being a non-talker guy. Like, he's a wild man from the jungle. He's fine if he's not particularly verbose. But I did really enjoy Marco in this segment, and Marco got big reactions and got like chants from the crowd and stuff. And just, again, goes to show that, the old rules don't apply.
All right. My elite pick for the week, I'm going to keep it simple. 2 women's segments. So there's been a lot of consternation about that we basically get one, or we get one women's segment each week. Now we know that the Bucks and Cody and Kenny are all very online, so I'm sure that they see this this debate happening. So they run out Nyla Rose, and also there's a lot of talk about Nyla not being that featured after having the first big story in the women's division. Nyla comes out and squashes Leva Bates, and then later we get the Chris Statlander Hikaru Shida match. So it's just good to see more focus being put on the women's division. The Nyla match also includes a story with Shanna that they've kind of built up. That's nice to see in the women's division. So I'm just happy to see stories and more focus for the women. Hopefully, as they expand this division and keep signing more talent, we'll be able to see more of them featured on the show.
Yeah, and if you even want to kind of go super granular with it, you really had 4 women's segments because you had the match with Nyla and Leva Bates. You had the segment with how Shauna came down afterwards and got put through a table, and then it was Rick Knox who also got put through the table, right?
Yes.
And then you had the match with Chris Stat and Hikaru Shida, and that led right into Brandy Rhodes and the Nightmare Collective coming out. Also that. And so, I mean, like, I think that this kind of proves that, one, that they're going to focus more on women when they have like the stories, which, isn't necessarily the best thing, but it's better than just doing stuff just for the sake of doing it. And at the same time, I mean, this Statlander versus Hikaru Shida match is going to be like one of the matches like that people will look back on and be like, okay, this is like the true start of Chris Stat and AEW. So it was a very exciting night in that regard.
I'm very confused about the librarians and what they are. Like, obviously they're jobbers, but their relationship is unclear. Like, Peter Avalon comes out, he was in a dark match as a pure heel, and then he came out with Leva Bates as a pure heel. But then Leva told him to shut up, even though they've been paired together for like months at this point. So that was supposed to babyface her, I think, so that she would be the babyface against Nyla. But then Nyla is like the monster heel, but also she like is kind of a babyface a lot of the time. And it's just very confusing to me. Maybe they just want the librarians to be dynamic, that they can plug them into whatever spot. So then Nyla's the monster heel, but like she beats the shit out of the referee and everybody thinks that's awesome because, you get to see the referee get slammed on top of someone. Like, it's the same shit that Moxley does later in the show, but he does it to a big babyface pop. It's just very unclear. I don't really get the delineations there.
Yeah, if they wanted real heel heat there, she should have done it to Aubrey.
Yes, Aubrey is super over, and that would have gotten a big heel reaction.
Is that what you're deleting, Nate?
No. So my delete is the Pentagon versus Daniels match. This was like pretty slow. I will say they've done both a good job both weeks that I attended here, that being in the crowd and watching these shows, you do not get a super stilted production that's like, you constantly feel like you're being interrupted by the television commercials or whatever. Like, they keep it running pretty smooth and have a lot of, little interjections to make it feel like it's a coherent show and not like, here's a segment, here's an ad break, here's a segment, here's an ad break, so on and so forth. I don't know if this went through the ad break, but this match seemed like really stilted and slow and like a time filler or something. Chris Daniels had a pretty bad botch on the his rope flip moonsault deal that is a regular move that he does, and it always sucks to botch. But I don't know. This was supposed to be like a big match. Like, they've built this match going back to the tag team tourney with Chris Daniels getting dropped on his head and eliminated from the tag team tourney. He came back to get his revenge by dressing up as Pentagon a couple times, and this is them finally showing off. And crowd was not particularly behind it. They were hot for both guys, like, individually, but Pentagon comes out there and is doing his shtick and doing his chops and doing his woo and doing his kicks, and it's like no real fire or feud there, and it just seemed like he was trying to like slow it down to stay at Daniel's pace or something. I don't know. I really did enjoy this show considerably more than the one last week in Chicago, but this was probably the low point for me.
Yeah, this was one of the worst matches they've had in a while on TV that didn't have just outright bad people who shouldn't be on TV. I thought that it was really kind of depressing to see Christopher Daniels like right now. Like that was kind of the takeaway that I got from Daniels, because I mean, he was someone who's been at top level basically for the last 2 decades. And this was like the match that I watched and I was like, wow, he's getting up there. And Penta just kind of did indie Penta. So it just kind of sucked.
I've seen Penta do a lot more on the indies than he did in this match. I've seen him do, he's done, top rope Canadian destroyers in front of 300 people in the cell, and he wasn't doing that here.
I also think, and I'd have to look back at my spreadsheet, but I think that was Daniel's first match on Dynamite.
There was a tweet that it was his first match on TNT since, he did a jobber appearance in WCW. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it was bad. And especially when Daniels was lauded for that promo a few weeks ago where he was like really going at Pentagon and like how fired up he was toward Pentagon. And you're right, Nate. We didn't see any of that in the match. Mike, what are we deleting?
So for someone that like, I feel like I've been pretty strongly pro Cody throughout this entire run here. That promo finished very, very strong. But that first half of it was just kind of just disconnected in a lot of ways. Like, unless it was like planting seeds for things in the future, it just felt like it was kind of awkward. And this was also during the part of the show where there was some audio problems for Turner. And it just felt like it was kind of weird when you came out and you could hear the fire pyro more so than the crowd response because of whatever production cues or issues they had there. It just was something that like I watched this promo and I kind of came along with it going like, okay, you finish this off like the old Harley Race, like title belt and the briefcase full of cash saying like, I'm the real rich person, which, it's kind of weird to be such a big baby face nowadays, just flaunting all that, especially versus MJF later says, oh, I paid off the motherfucking butcher, the motherfucking blade, and the motherfucking bunny. So it just was like a very weird promo the farther I get away from it, even though at the time it felt like that he had the crowd in Champaign in his hand, but leading up to it, like leading to like that conclusion, just was like a really weird path, if that makes sense. It was a lot like the old Family Circus cartoons where Jeffy goes like all the way through the sandbox and like out to the street and then back over to the drain and then finally goes back inside. That's how I kind of felt that promo. It just was like, I felt like I've been like one of his worst promos he's done on TV.
I mostly liked the promo, and the crowd was super hot for him. Like, he came out and started doing this promo, and at one point, like, just the entire crowd, like, spontaneously, like, stood up and gave him a standing ovation and chanted his name, which I don't think I've ever seen at a wrestling show, certainly not in an arena this big. And I was like, holy shit, like, what a baby face. So I did like the promo for the most part, but the whole part about, oh, you're hood rich and I'm real rich, or you're rich and I'm wealthy, like, I get that he likes Flair, and Flair is like a big baby face because of how the culture has changed now. But it did sort of have vibes of, Hillary Clinton being like, Donald Trump's not really rich, or like, we have the good billionaires over here and he's a fake billionaire. It's like, all right, dude.
It's also like a bizarre misreading of Dusty Rhodes' entire career. Like the fact that Dusty was the fucking Hard Times promo is like the whole thing with Dusty was that he was a regular dude. He was the son of a plumber, right? That's why he was a huge over babyface. And Flair, when he was doing the, shit about limos and flying in jets, was not always a babyface. Flair would be a babyface at times, but that was most often a heel character, especially when he was paired up with Dusty. So it's like very strange. And he can kind of do whatever he wants, right? Like he's untouchable in AEW right now, but it's a weird path to go down. And as Mike said, it's especially a weird path to go down with MJF when that's like MJF's character. So I hate to see Cody, like, it was fun, the little, shoot comments of Cody's fun in the moment, but it like really takes the piss out of MJF. I'm not sure that you want to do that at this point.
And especially when like we have a storyline there of, you were my best friend. I saw you as like the potential. Everyone else thought that you were an asshole, but I thought we had something, which is much more of like the classic Southern wrestling trope to do there. And instead he decides to miscalculate how Dusty and Flair were, because Flair totally got pops, especially towards the end of his career in the South. But for a lot of time, like he was basically portraying himself as like the rich northerner who like comes in, he has a jet, he's going to come in, take all your women in town and then leave on the jet and you're going to be left there. Like that was a key character trait of Ric Flair up until pretty much he came back from the WWF. So it was like a really weird path when there was such an obvious one that I feel like would have played at both of their strengths a lot more if they played up like the friendship and the mentorship thing. And, you know, at the end, like he said the line of like, he's going to make this and he's going to pay MJF so he can give MJF an education. And like, I thought like that was like a good closing line, but that's what it should have been about the whole entire 5 to 10 minute promo that it had. And like, that's the issue. I feel like it's just a really bad misreading that got to its conclusion, but took a really weird path to get there.
All right. I got to delete something. I was going to talk about the Cody promo, but I've said my piece on it. So I'm just going to take this as literally as possible, something that I would actually like to delete from this show, and that is the Awesome Kong and Brandy segment. So you're coming off Chris Statlander and Hikaru Shida, which turned out to be a pretty good match, a very good match by the end of it. Statlander has this huge moment where she beats the number one contender, and she kind of seems like, okay, this is going to be a real person that we're going to focus on. We're going to really try to do something with her. And then you immediately step on that moment with the lights going out and Kong and Brandy coming out. And then not to mention this segment like sucked shit. I mean, it was very bad. Brandy's promo was cringy. The whole thing with is it Melissa or Melanie Cruz?
Melanie Cruz.
Melanie Cruz coming out. That sucked. Like she kind of used the same deal as like Dark Order with like the pledge thing. That sucked. It was just like nothing good about this. So I would like to delete it from the show.
I'll do a little devil's advocate. It kind of doesn't hurt Chris Statlander so badly because the premise was Brandy was like, oh, wow, she's really impressive. I want her with me. So, you know, that's kind of a justification you can use. But yeah, this pretty much died a death in the building. You know, I'm like fine with a segment not exactly hitting, but just doesn't seem to be the tone that people really want to see. You know, the original novelty of All In was kind of, hey, it's not fucking hard to do sports entertainment. You can be a bunch of guys doing it on YouTube and do it better than the WWE, right? And this was just like, I don't know if it was a step too far toward like TNA or Lucha Underground or something, or just, I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be in line with what the crowd wants to see, or maybe it just wasn't executed well enough to justify the leap of logic that, you know, Cody's wife is now, you know, dark and evil and with Awesome Kong. I guess, you know, maybe they're going to use Melanie Cruz now because, you know, it's not like we want Awesome Kong or Brandy to be out there wrestling matches on behalf of this unit, you know, more than once or twice a year, maybe. So, you know, she wouldn't be my first pick, having seen her in Shimmer and AEW a couple times, but the match was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, it just was like a weird thing this week with like the in-ring promos. And it's been something that when you compare it to like the first few weeks of Dynamite, where I feel like the promos were all like hitting on every mark, and even leading up like to the big Cody promo in Charlotte, like I like a lot of these promos, but there's certain things that happen in these big in-ring segments now that maybe it's that there are too many cooks in the kitchen. Maybe it's that everyone's kind of just given free rein and not allowed, and people aren't saying like, okay, Brandy, what's the deal here? Or like, what's going to be the deal with the Nightmare Collective? What's going to be the deal with the Dark Order? What's going to be the deal with the motherfucking Butcher, the motherfucking Blade, and the motherfucking Bunny? But it's just like, I don't know. Like we've talked about like the 3 big in-ring promos this week, and it feels like that in comparison to past weeks, there's a lot of negatives to them versus how things were in the past. And maybe that's just me thinking about this and reading a little bit too much into it, but I don't remember us having so many misgivings with in-ring promos that in a company that, at least for the first arc, was doing a really great job of them.
Oh, also the Moxley and Janela promo. Like, I liked the content of Joey's promo fine. I liked the content of Moxley's promo fine, but Moxley didn't do Janela any favors in there. Like, he comes over, he's like 2 feet taller than him. He's like, kids, which is funny. Like, he's charismatic. This is why he's a big star. But then it's like, okay, no chance that Joey's winning this match. And I don't know where we go with Joey now. He's like lost all his matches.
Yeah, I do think there was this sense coming in, right, that this would be sports. That was the Cody sell. That was the Tony Khan sell, that we were about to get real sports, but in pro wrestling. We're going to have these rankings and the wins and losses are going to matter. And it's like the fucking BCS every Friday. Like, that's what they keep selling. And then we have a lot of fuck finishes, a lot of weird, like, distraction things. We've got some of these weird kind of gimmicks coming in. Like, the Butcher and the Blade is not a cheesy gimmick, really. It's not the same as, like, Kong and Brandy. It's not even the same as the Dark Order. It's, like, just two dudes who, like, have a very specific and unique look. And that's fine. Like, that's cool, because also they're, like, bruisers, right? So you can play along with that, and that's fine. But some of this other stuff, it worries you. It may be what Mike said about too many cooks. I'm not sure. It also could be that they're trying to figure out how to fill 2 hours of time on TV every week, and that is much more difficult than probably they thought it would be going in. But it is interesting to see where this is going to end up and what kind of wrestling company this is going to be.
I do like that Cody has these multiple feuds. I want to be on the record as liking it, because a lot of people don't like it. They think that should be laser focused on MJF. But we're supposed to believe these like dynamic characters inhabiting this shared space on a weekly basis or whatever. And it's like a lot of people should be headhunting for Cody. He's like the biggest star. So
yeah, and I mean Cody's still in the top 5. So if you're someone else, like if you're Andy Williams or Pepper Parks, you should be going for them like this. And they've made it kind of clear now, going off of what AB said, that the Butcher and the Blade and the Bunny are basically hired guns. So like they have their own different thing that's not necessarily the whole goth thing. They're people that like they're getting paid off to do these things, and that could be a different character trait than the other two darkish groups.
But that's also not sports, right? That's also not that real sports.
No, I mean,
but
it's American pro wrestling. It's
right,
not New
which
Japan,
is fine.
yeah.
But let's just be honest about what we're doing here. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, drop the win-loss ratings. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's the whole thing about if they're supposed to be reset, and that's become a talking point about like losses mattering, about like Chris Jericho taking a pinfall loss in a tag match. How's that going to affect your champion going forward? And I mean, at the end of the day, it's fucking pro wrestling, guys. Like, and at the best of it, like the best parts of this has kind of been the Southern wrestling thing where they didn't talk about wins or losses that much. It was about feuds. It was about emotions. It was about you wronged me, you attacked me. And if anything, they should be dialing more into that.
Yeah, it's like Cody Dustin is the height of this promotion to this point. Like, that's the road I would like to see them be on. I agree about the multiple feuds. Like, as quickly as they did the MJF turn, this story needs to go for a long time. Like, it needs to be stretched out. I mean, I love that MJF is doing the I refuse to wrestle Cody thing, and I hope he doesn't wrestle him for a long time.
I also enjoy it, but it is the same thing Jericho's doing with Moxley.
Okay, yes. Yeah, I guess that's true.
That's going to come to a head sooner because Jericho came out and confronted him at the end of the show. But the last 2 weeks, the story has been Moxley wants Jericho, and Jericho did this whole promo, the joke of which was, I'm never wrestling Moxley, which is
right.
Again, there's a lot of pro wrestling stories out there to be told, and at some point you have to repeat them all, but you just got to has to be some more quality control about what you're repeating between segments and stuff like that. To amend my statement, I like that there's this feud between Cody and this new group, but you're asking a lot of the Butcher and the Blade to have their debut match be against Cody, sure, big star, and QT, because QT is an obvious jobber. Everyone knows he's a jobber. The crowd's hasn't seen him to get invested in him even as a jobber. It's he's not the librarian. He's basically has been seen more as a crew guy than anything else, and. Maybe the idea is they're just really going to beat the shit out of QT next week, and that's how they're going to get the act over. But if they're going to do like a real match, like he's not helping the match.
All right, let's run down the whole show. As we talked about, the show started with the Young Bucks and Dustin Rhodes defeating Proud and Powerful and Sammy Guevara. Matt Jackson pinned Sammy after the senton double Meltzer driver combo that Mike talked about. In the second match, we had Phoenix defeating Trent with the spinning muscle buster. After the match, Phoenix wouldn't shake Trent's hand. They got into a shoving match, and Trent gave him the business. Trent, man, as this was happening, I was defending Trent as a singles wrestler in a group DM, and then he kind of shit the bed here, and this wasn't very good.
Oh, I thought this was fun. I thought that this was a fun match. I like Trent as a singles wrestler because he will do like dumb things to his Gumby body, and he seems to be okay, or at least he has injuries and he recovers from them. Like ridiculous things such as, oh, I'm gonna get my legs kicked out underneath me from the turnbuckle. What am I going to do on the way down? It's completely unnecessary. I'm going to hit my neck against the back of the turnbuckle on the way down because I'm a weirdo. And it just was, I think Phoenix is someone that I think that they have a long kind of build for him, especially down the line when there's a face champion. But I thought that Trent held up his end of the deal. It wasn't as good, in my opinion, as the Pentagon match, but I still thought that this was a perfectly fine singles match. Like, I didn't think that Trent was bad. Like, what necessarily do you think was bad from Trent, AB?
This was just boring, and Trent's really good, and it should have been really good. Phoenix is really good, but this wasn't fun.
I thought this was pretty fun. Phoenix is a big star. So I do wonder if this was colored maybe by the sound issues, because it was pretty hot during a considerable part of this match. My misgivings during the initial part of the match was it was a lot of Trent selling, and Phoenix is supposed to be heel, and Phoenix was doing all the cool moves, and he was doing all the acting like a badass, and Trent was basically just selling around for him. They managed to, during Trent's comeback, they got some of that juice back, and it's like, they got on equal footing there. But I mostly came away from this going, yeah, Phoenix, big star. The Champaign crowd is, a lot different than the Chicago crowd. It's like a lot of rural, Southern Illinois people, and they were all super behind Phoenix. Like, he was getting big reactions for all of his offense because he has very cool offense. So yeah, there's like a Phoenix showcase. I was like, yeah, this was pretty good.
Next up was the Cody interview with Tony Schiavone. Not going to go through it point by point because we talked about the broad strokes, but I have to talk about the opening fucking line. Cody starts this promo with, they call them cool, right? Those hearts that have no scars to show. Is anybody familiar with this other than me?
Is this an emo song lyric?
No, it's a Garth Brooks song lyric.
No.
Nah, that's not the kind of country I listened to growing up.
This is from Standing Outside the Fire.
Okay. Garth was from Oklahoma, bud. There was definitely like Dallas-Fort Worth not caring too much about Garth because he was from Oklahoma.
I'm not saying everybody should know about it. I just want to know why Cody decided to open this promo with that line.
Especially,
it's Central Southern Illinois. Again, he's playing to the audience.
Okay, I could see that.
Okay, but his delivery of it came off like he was like, oh, I thought this was kind of a funny thing, but now like I'm realizing it's not as I'm saying it. It was just like very uncomfortable. Very bad. That's it. This promo was what it was. We talked about it already. Okay, Joey Janela is backstage with Alex Marvez. We talked about this a little bit too. He says he accepted the Moxley match because he wants to make a name for himself because he feels like he's been put on the back burner. But this time the match is going to count and you'll have to kill me. And that's when Mox shows up and does nothing except say, kids. That was it. We get a Dark Order pre-tape, but this time, we see more of them. They're in the woods initiating people into the Dark Order. So they're just really, really going all the way with this.
They should go heavier into like the covert cult stuff and less of like the creepy creepers. Like, come on, like talk about like the path to the bridge, like Dianetics. Like, there's a lot of like ways that they could make this even more cloaked that I think would be really interesting rather than it's like, oh, you come in here because you have no friends. Like, I love this. I think this is going to turn the Dark Order into an overheal act. It's just, I feel like that going like straight into that when they could have like milked that out a little bit would have been interesting.
Yeah, I liked the creepy cult existing in the real world more than being in the woods.
They should recruit KTB.
They really should.
He's from the woods.
He could just be the largest creeper and he'd be like over.
Hell yeah. That would rule, actually. All right. Then we see the video of Nyla attacking Shanna last week while Nyla is entering. This is a thing of like, they do stuff on social media, and I think they just kind of expect people to see it. But at least this time, they put it on TV for us to actually understand that an angle was coming, which I appreciated. So then that's when Nyla defeated Leva Bates with the native bomb. Shanna comes out. She jumps off the top rope, but Nyla takes her out, gets a table out. As we said, she power bombs Rick Knox through the table, and then Shanna on top of him. And we see Britt Baker doing what I'm calling the NXT face on camera there, a little rib on NXT.
Yeah, that's cute. I didn't see it in the arena, but it's kind of funny.
And there was a tweet later that Nyla is suspended from AEW for the rest of the year. So a very stiff penalty. But we didn't report this. I retweeted it from somebody, but she's going to be at Marvelous, a Joshi promotion in Japan on December 8th and tagging with the real Asuka. So this is presumably just a write-off for her to tour Japan for a little while.
I think that's good for her. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's something that like Nyla will come back in 2020 and she'll have like some more experience working in Japan, and then she'll come back and she's still like on, I think, a 3-match winning streak. So she has heat, and then you have the Shauna thing. So I think this is actually kind of a smart little thing. It is kind of weird how they're like doing like all these like fines and suspensions, and there's no authority figure other than that one time that Tony Khan was an authority figure. I feel like we're really negative this week.
I hope Ferrante's listening. Nobody will engage with that. So then we get the Jericho promo. This is the bottom of the hour. So, going over 9:00, they want to have Jericho out there. He says he has to have one more 2019 match contractually. So he's put together a little list, and gets a big pop for that. And he says, shut up. This isn't 2016. This is the lexicon of Le Champion. Le Champion. I'm like JR out here trying to pronounce shit. So then he's listing wrestlers he won't wrestle. This was not that funny, but the thing here was that he just kept listing Moxley over and over again.
That was very cute. Pretty funny. Got laughs throughout it. Things are always funnier in person.
Absolutely. This was one of the first times that Jericho came across as like more of an older person. Like the humor that he was trying to do here wasn't as like cutting edge as some of his other stuff has been.
Well, it's the first time he's immediately gone back and did a WWE trope. Like,
this is a WCW trope. This is the
right,
list
yeah.
of 1004 moves.
I mean, there was a lot of arm bars. John Moxley is the arm bar of AEW. So apparently, I didn't catch this, but apparently, like the last line was supposed to be Mar, and then he got cut off. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
I don't get the reference.
Marty Skrull.
Oh, Mar. Got it.
I didn't notice that.
So Jurassic Express interrupts. Jericho says dinosaurs and little children are also on my list, which I did think the little children thing was kind of funny. No, this was the part I thought was funny when he said Marco's just small for his age, and Jericho said Marco is small for any age. That got a pop out of me. He says, you can't mean Jungle Boy. He's never talked. And he closes this by telling Jungle Boy he thinks he's a piece of shit, which I thought it really escalated there a little much. He says, you wouldn't last 10 minutes with me. And this results in a brawl. And Jurassic Express stands tall. Unfortunately, I wrote J.E. here. And so, but Jeffrey Epstein was not actually involved in this segment. Just want to be clear. This podcast is a Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself podcast for sure. Jericho throws a tantrum, and basically they set the match between Chris Jericho and Jungle Boy for December 18 in Corpus Christi. Really building this up since they're going to be taking a week off after that.
One thing that we didn't talk about during the promo, there was a really funny reaction when Luchasaurus said he had a master's degree from Chris Jericho. Like, Chris Jericho did a double take that was kind of funny. Like, if they went more on that versus the whole marginalized population bit, I thought that would have kind of crystallized this, and I would have a better taste in my mouth about this promo.
I don't think any of them should talk, to be honest. I think it's better if they don't talk. It's like a dinosaur and his jungle friend and their child they found. maybe Marco should talk, if any of them.
I mean, that would be a way to do it. I mean, I don't know if that's what I go with, but I do see your point about Jungle Boy though. So yeah,
I think Luchasaurus is less cool the more he talks. Is really the main thrust of my point here. Anyway,
I agree. Then we got Chris Statlander defeating Hikaru Shida with the big bang. And that's when the lights out, and we had Kong and Brandy come out. Jonathan Snowden of making fun of people who watch Sailor Moon fame reports that Brandy Rhodes told him that AEW has signed Chris Statlander. So we kind of have talked back and forth a bit about that, but it looks like she's there for the long haul.
Great get.
Absolutely.
Great get and match of the night. You know, I mean, she's capitalized on her opportunities each time.
Second best match of the night.
Oh, I thought this was the match of the night. I thought Chris Stat and Hikaru Shida was the best match there.
I think the trios was better. I think I agree with Nate here.
Although I will say,
I'm surprised to hear Mike not vote for trios.
Yeah, I tweeted this. Chris Statlander has been on TV basically once and is working in front of, I don't know, however many thousands of people in a pretty big basketball arena here, and it's like, again, this sort of goes back to that thing about how WWF crowds were not tolerant of new acts and would only want to see the stars that they know. And Southern wrestling crowds would be like, all right, let's see what you got. And this was the case where it was like, okay, they wanted to see what Chris Statlander had. And she was like impressive here. And she has a good move set and sort of, the gimmick kind of broad, but she kind of works with it. So I was impressed.
Yeah, I hadn't watched her wrestle till she showed up in this promotion, and I've been impressed every step of the way, especially for her level of experience and just having that powerful look to where she can be a babyface. It's like the opposite of Riho, whom I love, but she can be a babyface, but also beat the shit out of people. So it's gonna add diversity. All right, then we had Pentagon Jr. defeating Christopher Daniels with the package pile driver. We talked about this already. The finish, this is why I was kind of complaining about this a little bit earlier, but Phoenix threw Christopher Daniels' mic stand into the ring. Pentagon picked it up, tried to swing it at Daniels, missed him. Then Daniels got it. You do the thing where the ref looks and oh, is the babyface going to hit him and get disqualified? And then Pentagon kicks him in the balls and then hits the pile driver. And then we get the Lucha Brothers celebrating after the match. It's just so the Lucha Brothers have pretty much always been heels in this promotion, but some weeks you are supposed to just forget that, I think, or you do forget it. Like you're talking about everybody in Champaign going crazy for Phoenix because they don't play up the heel stuff very much with them. And these guys are so cool that you have to do something over the top to get them over as heels.
They're too cool to be heels, and you can have cool heels, but trying to hammer home that they're heels with these mic stand spots and low blows and stuff is just working against the overness of the segment and of the act. I think just let them be big stars and, get them away from Christopher Daniels.
Yes. Then we got a Butcher and the Blade pre-tape with the Bunny doing the talking here, which is good. So let's, this is kind of like what you're saying about Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy here. These guys don't need to talk, right? They can just look menacing, and that's good. And Ali says, we were sick of seeing your face everywhere. And we see Cody coming up on the screen. We're here to cut the head off the snake. So we get motivations from them. That's good. It gives us somewhere to go. And it gives us, the immediate feud with them and Cody. I like that there's multiple feuds, but I don't like the MJF paid them off, but now they're saying we're here to cut the head off the snake. No, you're here because MJF hired you to come in.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
Yeah, it undercuts them a little bit.
Yeah.
I must have missed that entirely. The paid off angle, I didn't.
Well, it was only on social media.
Exactly. That's because it was only on Twitter.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's as far as I'm concerned, that didn't happen then. But yeah, I will say, Allie is a very charismatic and engaging heel. I think she's better as a heel than a babyface. She got onto TV doing the babyface thing in TNA, but I think she's much better suited for being a heel, whether in CZW or Shimmer or whatever. So yeah, I think great to have her as the mouthpiece for the two guys who don't talk. That's the way to do it.
All right, then we had Jon Moxley defeating Joey Janela with the paradigm shift. And after this match, we see Jericho doing the Mox thing where he's coming down the steps and he's got the inner circle with him. And that was how the show ended. So any more thoughts on this match or just anything else on the show overall?
I really enjoyed the show overall. I think it was better than last week. I enjoyed myself more than it All Out, to be honest, because maybe just the crowd was more lively, or it wasn't we didn't have a bunch of pay-per-view quality matches, but we got a good handful of matches. And again, the good thing about the TV and the way they set it up is like there are matches with some meat to them, and it doesn't seem like you're going to a WWF Raw taping in 1999 where everything's 2 minutes and then an ad break. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed myself with the show.
I just this match was okay. That's all I was going to say is this match was okay. It kind of heated up at the end because they had the ramp and there was some cool stuff on the ramp. But yeah, that's all I had to say.
All right. Yeah, good show overall. They bounced back from the Chicago show, I thought. And there were some things I didn't like about it, but overall, I had fun watching it. So, it's hard to complain about that. I can definitely see that it would have been a lot of fun live, especially because the crowd seemed to be very into pretty much everything that happened. The dark matches that were taped, we had Britt Baker, Chuck Taylor, and Orange Cassidy on commentary. I'm assuming one for each match and not the three of these people doing commentary. We had Scorpio Sky versus
I never
Jimmy.
saw Chuck or Orange, to be honest.
Okay, I got this on the internet somewhere. Scorpio Sky versus Jimmy Havoc versus Peter Avalon, a three-way. The Jurassic Express team of Luchasaurus and Marco Stunt taking on John Silver and Alex Reynolds, and Kenny Omega taking on Kip Sabian. So Mike and I will talk about those matches on AEW Light next Wednesday morning. Anything, whatever you want to say. Anything you want to say about any of these matches, Nate?
Kenny got received like a big star. Again, this was a less metropolitan audience than I have previously seen AEW, but Kenny was very over, and his whole thing was very over. Who did he face? Kip Sabian? I don't know about Kip Sabian. I don't know.
Would you say he's super bad in the ring?
No, I don't think he's bad. I don't know. Kind of has that thing where it's like he's play acting at being a wrestler instead of just being a wrestler. You know what I mean?
Well, he's young. He probably hasn't figured it out yet.
For sure.
Also, he's also
kind of
pretty. So that's that sets you back in being able to do anything real, anything good. Because everybody tells you you're good before you get there, You're
speaking from experience?
No, I'm speaking from an absolute well of resentment. All right, next week, 12/11 in Garland, Texas, which they're calling Dallas.
It kind of is.
All right, I'm just saying. It's what they're saying.
It's eastern edge of what's the overall metropolitan area. There's a lot of weird small cities within Dallas-Fort Worth. That's why the Cowboys used to play in Irving, and now they're in Arlington. Garland.
How far away is Garland from Corpus Christi?
6-7 hours.
Okay, so it's reasonable to draw in both places.
Yeah, no, it's and I'm probably wrong when I say just 6-7 hours. It's a long drive between them. Texas is fucking big, bud.
Sure, yeah, I get that.
It takes forever. It used to take me 12 hours to get out of the state whenever I try to drive to Louisiana.
Well, here's the matches that the good folks of Garland are going to see next week. At least two of them we know so far. The Young Bucks are going to take on Proud and Powerful, and Cody and QT Marshall are going to take on the Butcher and the Blade, and presumably they will be joined by the Bunny. So again, Mike and I'll talk about those on AEW Light next week and anything else that gets announced. Just a few other notes, and we'll get out of here. So Nate mentioned a little bit the DVR numbers earlier. Dave Meltzer has gotten a hold of some DVR numbers, and he says they are, quote, really big, shocking big. So it turns out a lot of people watch NXT and AEW on DVR. Now, you can't just say, okay, well, ignore the ratings numbers because here's these numbers, because the advertisers aren't paying for DVR numbers. And that's important because without advertising, these shows aren't going to be on television. So, that's why people care about the ratings numbers. So here's what we know. When it comes to Dynamite, 57% watch the show live, 22% watch it over the next 3 days, and then 17%, the rest of that first week. NXT, pretty close, a little higher on live watching. 65% of their viewers are watching live, and obviously that means lower after that. So if you average it, and this goes from the first show all the way through the second week of November, you get 741,000 people watching on average each episode of Dynamite, and 400,000 each week watching NXT. So anything we can take away from that?
I think the big thing is that you have people who will watch the show, but they're not necessarily like Decision One watchers. Like it's not their first priority, which that could be a lot of things. I mean, where Wednesday could be a big bar night in some areas, especially where I've lived. Wednesday's been a big bar night. It could be people could work and like that. The big thing though about it is the fact that they get 96% of their viewership within their +3 and +7s. Like as long as you're not like a bingeable wrestling show, that's a pretty strong number. And yeah, maybe it means that this is not exactly the best time for it, maybe. But I mean, that's something that we've kind of countered with the whole NXT thing. And what if NXT didn't decide to go to USA and make that a thing? Like, there's a lot of different things here. It's interesting, but as you rightfully said, this is cool to see. It definitely gives them promise, but now it's converting them from being +3s and +7s into live watchers for their ad demos.
All right, we also found out this week that AEW has a deal with In Demand for quarterly pay-per-views through 2021. So all this really does is confirm that they're going to be doing quarterly pay-per-views, as we've known all along. And we don't know about a price point, but presumably it's going to be the same Bleacher Report live price point. All right, last note, Kenny Omega defeated Dragon Lee to retain the AAA Mega Championship back on December 1. I haven't seen the match. Did either of you see it?
You can't. It's going to go up on YouTube, I think, this weekend.
Amazing. So not even, but there's like fan cams probably out there.
Yeah, there's fan cams. But This was a weird bot show that was done by the president of Rush France. So
Rush France.
Okay, I can't get a Rush Friends joke out, but I was working on one.
He didn't bring the belt to Champaign. He should have brought the belt.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you guys want to talk about? I mean, literally.
No, I'm tired. I'm this fucking drive. And I got very bad idea to take like 2 days off of work to go see more wrestling when I just had like a 4-day weekend off work. You know, that was poor planning on my part.
How long is it a drive from where you are to Champaign?
Like 2.5 hours.
Okay, so it's a real hike.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. The where I live now is actually pretty close to the relevant highway. So if I just happen to live, you know, there are places close to me that are like considerably further than from Champaign, just because they're not near that particular inlet, on ramp. You know, whatever.
Yeah,
on route.
No, I follow you there.
Yeah, but I don't like driving, so
that's fair. Just wondering, how did it seem like of college students there? Like, did that seem like that they had, because that seemed to be like a big pull there versus the other on-campus shows before?
I think there were not a lot of college people in our particular section. Again, a lot of like townies and like families and like normal sort of wrestling fans that you would see. You know, I ran into I guess a fair amount of college kids out on the concourse and stuff, but you know, was by no means like this is a college student event here. It seemed like a regular sort of local event. I thought the crowd seemed pretty good considering this might be one of their smaller markets that they've run. I don't know. I mean, it's like 200,000 in Champaign is the population there, and we're coming right off the holiday again. So, but I was like, oh yeah, this crowd is we're not filling the building here, but it's respectable and they're all very hot. So. Yeah,
that picture you posted looked like, I mean, that was when dark was starting, right? And it looked pretty full even up in the second deck.
Yeah, the second deck behind, well, there's like a bowl and then like another deck and then like another deck. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the top deck was like empty, but again, I'll look pretty respectable and kind of a good dome sort of shape for wrestling. It's kind of, because it's just like it's circular and it's got like the different tiers coming up around it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a cool looking building, at least on TV, with the ramp, and then with that made it look like it was a lot more compact and people were more on top of each other. So I thought it looked cool on TV at least.
All right, well, that's the episode for this week. So make sure you're following us on Twitter at Everything AEW. I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Nate is at Epitasis. Mike is at Fuji Heya. Subscribe to the podcast so that you will get it as soon as it goes up. If you're on the podcast app, give us a rating or review. And please check out patreon.com/Everything Elite. We're also putting up, teasers or whatever. You get a little tease, a little bit of some of the shows that we're putting up if you stay tuned to our Twitter account. So look for that, and we'd love to have you join us for some bonus content. So I think that's it for this week. For Mike, for Nate, I'm Aaron, and we'll see you next time.